Welcome to this video, which is going to show you how to install Visual Studio Code and set it up to work with Python. The first thing we're going to do is to head to a web browser and type in Visual Studio Code in the search bar. It's the first hit, so we're just going to click through, and you can see that it's recognized that I'm using a Windows machine here. We're just going to click on the download button, and you can see that it's starting to download. Okay, the program's finished downloading now, so we'll launch the installer and install it. So this is just the default directory, and it goes into users, your username. We're going to get a start menu icon as well. We'll also add a desktop icon, and we're going to register code as an editor for supported file types. That's going to make it easier to open up files with code in. And we're also going to add it to our computer's path as well. That's a place where we can list programs so that other programs can see them and know how to call them if needed. Okay, Visual Studio Code finished installing. Okay, let's open up Visual Studio Code using the icon that's been added to the desktop. This is the Visual Studio Code landing page. You can see on the right hand side here there are some walkthroughs to help you get started. And we have some options here for how to start, like new file, open folder, and clone Git repository. And on the left hand side we have some different options. So we have the editor option open at the moment. That's called the Explorer. And you can see it's just on our desktop here, and these are some of the links on the desktop. We have a search function, we have a source control function, we have an option to run and debug code, and we have an option to install some Visual Studio Code extensions. Let's get started by creating a new file. So it's asking us to select a language to get started. These are all of the different languages that are supported in one way or another by Visual Studio Code. We're going to type Python into this box. And you can see down here on the right hand side, it's giving us a notification that we should install the officially recommended extension for Python to get rich language support. We'll do that a slightly different way in a moment. The first thing I'm going to do is save this file as test.py on the desktop and type a bit of code into it. Okay, so now we're going to install the official Python extension, but we're not going to do that using this pop-up just in case you miss it. We're going to do that using the Extensions tab. Let's navigate over to the Extensions tab. And you can see here that it's come up with a list of some of the most popular extensions for Visual Studio Code. And popular at the top here is the Python extension. So I'm going to click Install on that. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to install, I'm just going to get rid of this notification. Okay, the Python extension has been installed. And what we can see has happened straight away, if I go back to my test script, is that another pop-up has come up saying no Python interpreter is selected. You need to select a Python interpreter to enable various features. So what I'm going to do next is click on the bottom left-hand side and select a Python interpreter. And you can see that has come up with some options. As we only have one Python interpreter installed at the moment, it's just come up with the base Conda installation. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, now you should probably be able to see that down in this bottom left hand side, instead of saying no interpreter selected, it now says Python 3.9.7 that we just installed, and it even tells us the version. This is the base conda environment of Python. Next, we're going to run our code using our installed Python environment. We've got two options for how to run the code. We can run it in the command line, or we can run it in a Python interactive window. Now, I think most of the time, for most people, you're going to be using the Python interactive window. And I'm going to get rid of this pop-up about the Python interpreter because we've solved that particular problem. So to launch the interactive window, I'm going to select this bit of code. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to use the option Run Selection /line in interactive window. And you can see here that there's a keyboard shortcut as well, Shift and Enter. But I'm just going to right-click on the code and use this option from the menu. So when I do that, I can see that we've got a Windows security alert saying that some things have been blocked, including their own program, Visual Studio Code. So we're going to allow this for both options, which just allows Visual Studio Code to do what it wants. Now you can see that what also happened was this interactive window has popped up, and what it says is that it started the base Python environment 3.9.7, and it's actually run our code in this box and also printed the output. Now, one of the great things about the interactive window is that it is indeed interactive. So I can type some more code in this box and just hit Shift and Enter, and it's going to run that code too, and it's even going to tell me how long that code took to run. Now, the interactive window has lots of great features, and I'm just going to show you a couple of them now. The first is that if we create a variable x and assign the value 5 to it and hit Shift and Enter to do that, then if I bring up x again, then what we'll find is that that value of 5 has been kept. But if I forget what variables I've already assigned in this interactive session, then I can click on this variable view option at the top, and it will bring up a list of all of the variables that have been defined. Let's try it with a second variable, which is going to be of type string, and I'm going to call it message. And you can see that as soon as I hit Shift and Enter, that message variable gets logged as one of the live variables in our coding session. What I'd really like to happen now is with my script, if I create a new line and I want to run that new line, I should be able to do it by just clicking Shift and Enter. Now, that isn't the default behavior, but we can set it to be the default behavior. We just need to change one of the settings. Okay, let's make it so that anytime we hit Shift and Enter on some code in a script, it gets automatically sent to the interactive window. So we're going to click on the cog in the bottom left-hand corner and bring up the settings. And then we're going to type Python send into the settings. And you can see there's this option here that says Jupyter send selection to interactive window. So we're going to click yes for that. And what that means is if we get rid of the settings and we then go back to our script and hit Shift and Enter, then it gets launched straight into our interactive window. Let's get rid of the variable explorer for now. Now, even better, if I get rid of this interactive window completely and then reselect my code and hit Shift and Enter, the interactive window now starts automatically and runs all of the code I've selected. Okay, so now we've seen how to run some code in scripts. Let's now look at how to run code in a Jupyter Notebook. So I'll go back to the Get Started page and select New File, although I could have also gone File, New File in the menu up here as well. And you can see that in the initial drop-down, we have a choice here between a type of text file, a plain text file, like a script, or a Jupyter Notebook. Well, in this case, I'm going to click on Jupyter Notebook. You can see that this has launched a different kind of Python script. What we have here is a box where you can type some code in, and you can see that we've got some options up here like run all and plus markdown and plus code. The first thing I'm going to do is click on the plus markdown button to create a markdown cell. And in that, I'm going to type a title. This is a test notebook. This is an example of a markdown cell. And then I'm going to click this tick to run this code cell. And you can see here that it's run the markdown, which is a type of lightweight markup language, and created a title for us and some text as well. And actually, I'm going to add a subtitle as well with 2 hashes saying this is a subtitle. More text. So that's a markdown cell, and I'm going to move that to the top of the notebook as well, so that the code is underneath it. Now, Markdown gives you the option to put text next to code in a notebook. And if I click on outline, you can see that our notebook has some structure here according to this outline panel. So what can we do now? Well, let's add some code. So I'm going to type in some code, print hello world. And you can see that as I'm typing this code, it's helpfully come up with a definition of the print function, telling me what some of the options are and how to use the function. Okay, so it looks like we're ready to go in running some of this code, but the next thing we need to do is tell Visual Studio Code which interpreter, which Python kernel it should use when it's executing this notebook. So I'm going to click on this select kernel notebook, and you can see that it's got a top suggested one, and then below it a list of all of the installed Conda environments we have. We've just got one, the base environment, which is Python 3.9.7, so I'm going to use that. Now, if I click on Run All, what's going to happen is that all of these cells are going to be executed. So any markdown cells that I haven't rendered yet, let's add one as an example, and any code cells will all get run. And you can see here that the outputs of the code are inserted directly into the notebook. Notebooks are great for exploratory work and for times when you want to have your text alongside your code. So that's it for this quick introduction on how to use Visual Studio Code to run Python both in scripts and the interactive window and in notebooks.